Some nights look like a normal dinner until a plate flies across the room like a knife. I'm Lila Mae Dubois. People in Bronzeville call me Miss Lila. I've lived long enough to know the scariest things don't always roar. Sometimes it's just a soft, sharp sound of something breaking, and your heart knows a line was crossed. If you've ever pulled out a chair and wondered if you were allowed to sit, you know what domestic violence feels like. That night, a cool wind from Lake Michigan slipped through the window of our Lake Meadows apartment and touched my neck. I set a bowl of black bean soup on the table. My hands still shook, the way they do when I pour slowly so the surface won't ripple. My son, Marcus, poured wine into a crystal glass, eyes locked on the TV. His wife, Tanisha, wiped the table edge for the third time, like any trace of me was a stain. I pulled out my chair, slow and quiet. The chair leg touched the floor with a tiny scrape, like a thin line between allowed and not allowed. Tanisha lifted her head. "Who said you can sit at this table?" Her voice was sharp, like a chipped glass. I heard that question not with my ears, but down my spine. For a second, I thought I could smile, say sorry, stand up, and carry my soup back to the kitchen like all the other nights. But my feet did not move. Something old in me, some part that always bent and stayed small, stood up like a new backbone. The plate in front of me shot into the air. I didn't see whose hand moved. I saw a white arc, a crash, and pieces of china hitting my ankle, hot as sparks. Black bean soup splashed on the tile and on the hem of my gray dress. Marcus laughed and clapped. "Bravo, Tanisha." I didn't look at him. I was afraid I'd see the 5-year-old boy he used to be was gone. Deep in my chest, something cracked. Bronzeville was beautiful that night. Car lights drew yellow lines on the window, and a saxophone sang far below on the street. The beauty stayed outside, polite, stopping at the glass. Inside were the silent rules, the no's and don'ts nobody had to write down. I remembered my old porch, the garden that smelled like mint and tomatoes. I remembered my hands making coffee for my husband for 43 years. I sold my past to buy a home big enough for my son, thinking family just needed one more room. I was wrong. These new walls didn't know how to hug. They only bounced orders back at me. "Stand up," Tanisha said. She didn't shout. She didn't need to. I stayed sitting. I didn't gasp. I didn't cry. I looked down at the floor and saw the broken pieces shining like little eyes. I heard my heartbeat change. Maybe this is the moment many people name with 2 simple words: domestic violence. To me, it wasn't just a term. It was the smell of black bean soup mixed with floor cleaner, the wet line on my dress, and my son's clapping that sounded like confetti tossed at the wrong funeral. "Tonight you sleep in the kitchen," Tanisha said. "The living room is for guests." I heard Marcus agree without words. I tugged the tablecloth just enough to help me stand. Not because I wanted to leave the table, but because I needed to remember my legs were still mine. I stepped over the broken pieces, trying not to crush them more. In my head, a sentence pulled like a thread through a torn seam. "I am not a shadow, not tonight." Somewhere between the lake lights and the sour smell of laughter, I knew I had walked through a door no one else could see. The story wasn't over, not even close. But I knew this. Some stories start with a single sound of something falling. From that second on, I would be the one to tell it. If you see yourself in this clean, cold kitchen, put a period inside your heart. You are not alone. Because saying the right name of the dark is the first step to pulling the curtain open. And tonight, I'll say it again. Domestic violence. I used to believe a new home could fix old cracks. After Theo's funeral, I stayed in the empty kitchen for a long time. The fridge hummed like a ship leaving the dock, and I knew this trip wouldn't bring anyone back. In the days after, Marcus called less and less. Tanisha was busy. The only people who came by were utility workers, not family. Bronzeville kept breathing outside the window, but inside, the air stuck in my throat. I started to plan. Sell my old West Side house, the little garden where tomato vines still smelled like wet soil, and use the money to buy an apartment big enough, bright enough, with enough rooms for a family. I used that word on purpose. I wanted to believe family still meant me too. The real estate agent walked slowly down the hall, nodding, saying the market was up, and named a price, $84,000. I held the check like a bill for my age, light and heavy at the same time, smooth like a choice you can't take back. I called Marcus. He came fast, like he had never left me alone. Tanisha followed, her cold perfume like a quiet comment. "Mama, you sure?" Marcus asked, eyes dropping to the edge of the paper. I nodded. I thought maybe love needs more space to breathe. We toured a place in Lake Meadows, high enough to see Lake Michigan stretch out, low enough to hear the saxophone from the jazz bar on the street. Tanisha went to the kitchen first. She opened and closed the cabinets, flicked her finger on the counter like she was checking a shipment. "Okay," she said, looking straight at me in the shiny countertop. "But the deed goes in our names, cleaner that way." The word clean fell like a coin on the floor. Marcus smiled soft. "It's just paperwork, Mama. Home is still our home." The law office in South Loop smelled like fresh paper and coffee. Frosted glass on the door said, "Langston Price, attorney at law." He had salt and pepper hair and a slow voice. He asked if I wanted water. I shook my head. The pen was ready. The papers were stacked like pastry layers. I couldn't read fast, and my age couldn't catch each small line. Tanisha set her bag down, opened her laptop, and didn't look at anyone. Marcus rested his wrist on the back of my chair and patted lightly, like fluffing a pillow. "The condo will be in the names of Tanisha Cole and Marcus Dubois," Mr. Price read. Tanisha looked up and changed one thing. "Put my name first." He paused, then turned to me. "Mrs. Lila May, it's your money. Do you want co-ownership?" I looked at Marcus. His eyes left mine like a bird dodging rain. "Mama just wants peace," he said. "If things change later, it gets messy." I smiled, thin as a crease. "I trust my son, Mr. Price." Put another form in front of me. Acknowledgement of gift. The words were very polite and very cold. "Signing this means you gift the money and keep no right to the property," he said, plain and clear. I heard a metal pen click on the glass table, didn't know whose hand. Tanisha said, "Sign it." Soft but enough to hear. Outside, the train screeched through the crossing and left a long line of sound. I signed. My hand shook like someone learning a language again. Before we stood, Mr. Price pulled open a drawer, took out a card, and slid it to me. "If anything seems off, call me," he said, lower voice. "My mother is your age." I nodded and tucked the card into my wallet. The dry leather made a rustle like early winter. Later I learned his words were more than manners. They were a rope tied to a stranger's dock, waiting for a boat I hadn't noticed yet. When we moved in, I brought a few boxes of books, my mother's chipped teacup, and a photo frame of Theo smiling soft. Marcus and Tanisha brought a whole truck, a leather sofa, dark wood table, ceiling lights like small planets. My room was at the end of the hall, window facing a shaft, just a square of sky and the hum of a fan. "For now," Tanisha said, "we'll fix it later." I didn't ask how long later meant. At my age, some questions turn into sighs. The rules started with mornings. Tanisha didn't like anyone else making coffee. I filled the kettle. She turned it off. I opened the cabinet for bread. She closed it. "Don't mess things up," she said. "New home, new order." Marcus walked by and put his hand on my back for 1 second, like someone who used to love me. Then the hand was gone. At lunch, they ate at the table. My plate waited on the kitchen windowsill. I stood, facing the air shaft, eating with the noise of the vent. The first time, I thought they were busy. The third time, I named it domestic violence. Not fists. Lines. Invisible lines cutting a person into pieces once a day. Tanisha liked the home quiet. Quiet meant the living room TV only turned on for guests. Quiet meant shoes off at the door. Quiet meant no open windows because dust from King Drive might touch the white curtains. I learned to walk on my toes and cough in my throat, not my chest. I learned to read the table and know a spoon was out of place. Whenever I offered to help, the answer was don't, not a no, a command. Marcus told me not to mind it. "Tanisha is stressed, Mama." I nodded, like people nod at the weather. On Saturday night, friends came over. I stayed in my room. Someone knocked the wrong door, asking for the bathroom. Tanisha's voice floated. "Don't go in there. That's the storage room." I looked at Theo's photo and felt the eyes of the dead couldn't cover me anymore. When the guests left, Marcus tapped my door. "Mama, you okay?" "Okay," I said. "Some sadnesses. If you open your mouth, you can't close them again." One morning, I bought a few stems of mint and cherry tomatoes to set on the balcony so the home could smell like real cooking. Tanisha opened the door, saw the plants, and smiled without warmth. "This isn't a farm." She put the bag in the service closet and locked it. By evening, they were gone. The smell of new leaves faded like a request that never left my throat. Some nights I counted the money left in my savings and asked myself if I could rent one small room near the 51st Street Market. Numbers don't warm the night. I opened my wallet and saw Langston Price's card lying between two receipts. I put it back, the way people set a key on the table before they're ready to open a door. I didn't call. I still wanted to believe I could walk through this home without changing the color of my blood. Domestic violence, I learned, has its own soundtrack. The sharp wipe of a cloth on the table, the clack of a bowl set down in the sink, the click of a cup put down without a coaster. Each sound whispered, "You are a guest." I started writing tiny notes on the edge of my calendar. Today I didn't cry while eating standing up. Today I opened the window for 5 minutes after they left. Today I said, "My son," instead of just son. These lines were thin thread, stitching back a little dignity that leaked out every day. Once, I set a pot of black pepper chicken on the table, the dish Marcus loved as a kid. "I'll handle it," he said, eyes sliding away. Tanisha stood at the head of the table and looked at the pot like a stain. "Put it in the kitchen," she said. "This table isn't for home-cooked food." I carried it back. My hands shook and the sauce spilled over the rim, burning a small dot on my hand. I set the pot down so slowly I could hear my heartbeat change rhythm. In that moment I understood. I sold my old house to buy the perfect clean smell of a place with no room for the smell of people. And when a home won't give an old woman a chair, it won't give her a name either. At night Marcus texted, "Mama, please try to get along." I typed back, "Okay." But in my head another voice had started to grow. Enough. It wasn't loud yet, but it had a shape. I lay on my side and stared at the white ceiling like a blank page. The card in my wallet pressed like a grain of sand in a shoe. I knew one day I would pull it out, just not tonight. If you hear your own quiet lines at home, a chair that isn't for you anymore, a dinner eaten standing in the kitchen, leave a fize. Let's look straight at it and say the right name. Domestic violence is not only a punch. It's the way someone takes away tiny rights, your right to sit, to open a window, to place a little pot of mint where the sun comes in. And maybe, like me, you're carrying a business card in your wallet for tomorrow. I keep Addie, Langston Price's business card, in my wallet like a seed I'm not ready to plant. That morning, Bronzeville was wet with dew. King Drive had bus lines of light. I stood on the small balcony, hands on the cold rail, asking what I was waiting for, a miracle, or a clear answer I couldn't pretend not to see. Inside, Tanisha's steps sounded like a store manager checking stock. "Don't leave things out," she said when she saw my chipped teacup on the table. "This home needs to be neat." The word neat dropped to the floor like a coin again. I put the cup away, took my wallet, and closed my door softly. At my age, every decision makes a sound. I got off the bus in the South Loop, walked a few blocks, and found the law office. Clear glass, warm gold letters, hallways that smelled like new paper and weak coffee. Addie, Langston Price came to meet me. Navy suit. Eyes that didn't dodge. "Mrs. Lila May," he said, shaking my hand, warm and slow. "Please come in." His office faced a busy street. Every person walking past looked like a single story. I sat and set my wallet in my lap, careful, like it held all the Dubois blood. "Did you bring the papers you signed last time?" he asked. I opened my wallet and pulled out a stack with bent corners. He put on his glasses and read every page, every line. He made notes and marked a soft pencil line on the edges. "Tell me everything," he said. "Slow. Don't skip. Start with the house sale." I told him. The 84,000, the Lake Meadows place. How Tanisha kept saying neat. How Marcus called it just paperwork. How I ate standing in the kitchen facing the air shaft. How domestic violence can sound like a cloth wiping a table. My throat got dry. He handed me water. It cooled my teeth, then my chest. It had been a long time since I felt someone believed my voice. "There's one thing I see right away," Mr. Price said, without gloating and without chill. "The gift form is proper. But their deed was rushed." He pointed to tiny print where Marcus and Tanisha's names stood side by side, and my acknowledgement was missing the correct county notary block. "They hurried," he said. "Hurry is a friend of mistakes." I didn't know all the terms, but I knew the meaning. The papers had a hole. "So, what does that mean?" I asked. He leaned back, fingers laced. "It means there's a door you can walk through if you want. We must move fast and quiet. I'll prepare a corrective filing, civil folks call it a quiet title, to set legal ownership by the source of funds and the procedural gap. We file, we record, we work the process with the recorder's office. I'll need your signature in a few spots." He paused, looked straight at me, like through glass. "And I need you calm. Don't tell anyone until the record is set." Outside, a truck backed up beep like a small shock to the heart. I set my hand on the papers he pushed over. "Where will my name go?" He smiled, not a winner's smile, but the kind you see on someone who has watched many losses. "On the grantee line, the person who gets the right," he said. "Lila Mae Dubois. I also suggest adding a life estate or residency clause to protect you later." I thought about the new kitchen where coffee got poured down the sink for breaking standards. I thought about the old garden I sold, and the baby tomato plants locked in the service closet. Some things need their right name, or they keep wearing someone else's name inside your own home. "I'll sign," I said, hearing my voice steady like I was still 30. Mr. Price opened a drawer and took out another clean stack, edges sharp like no one had touched them. "I prepared this just in case you came back," he said softly. "After that first signing, I couldn't sleep. My mother is your age. My conscience said there might be a day you'd need this." He handed me a pen. My hand shook, but it was the shake of someone writing her name back onto a page that got erased. I signed wherever he dotted in red. I signed until my wrist ached. My letters started to look like my old church school handwriting, careful, straight, valuing every stroke. "Next step," he said, tucking pages into a folder. "I'll file urgent at the county. Could be a week. In that time, live as usual, no changes that raise flags. If anyone asks, say you had a bone checkup." He gave me a small list, phone numbers, and 2 names at the recorder's office who could check status. "If there's an emergency, if the violence escalates, call 911, then call me. Domestic violence is not just a moral story, it's a legal file. We handle both." I stood, and my knees felt lighter. "Do you need a retainer?" I asked. He shook his head. "Keep your money to hire home care if you need it. I'll bill by the book. Today, the main thing is pulling you back from the edge. There's a kind of kindness that isn't loud. It's like a thin line of light on the horizon. Small, but it doesn't go out." On the way back, I stopped at a small church near State Street. Dark wooden doors, damp wood smell that doesn't change with seasons. I didn't beg. I sat, breathed, and put my hands on my knees, feeling they were still mine. I spelled my name under my breath. Lilamaedubois. My name, not old lady. I stepped out into Chicago light, breaking through tight clouds like someone cut a small slit for the sun to leak in. That night I got home late. Tanisha looked at the wall clock. "This house has hours." I took off my coat, hung it up, and said lightly, "The lake was beautiful today." She caught the odd thing, my smile. Domestic violence hates smiles it can't measure. It needs faces and footsteps it can count. "Where did you go?" she asked. "South Loop," I said honestly. "Near a doctor's office." She nodded. Nothing more. Marcus looked over from the sofa. "Mama, did you eat?" "Not yet," I said, and poured water for myself, drinking slow, like someone relearning the right to use a glass in her own home. I stayed quiet all week, like Mr. Price said. I still woke early. I still washed the chipped teacup softly. I still ate standing by the kitchen window so I wouldn't touch their table. But under that quiet was another song, the hum of the county copier, the thump of a seal stamp, the key clicks of a case number, Mr. Price's shoes on a polished floor. I heard those sounds in my head, and it helped me stand more. When Tanisha complained about people's smell, I thought of fresh ink on paper. When Marcus said don't take it to heart, I thought of the line Grantee, Lila May Dubois. On the weekend, my phone rang. Mrs. Lila May. Mr. Price said, warm and steady. The filing is in. We have the record number. Please come this afternoon to sign the final acknowledgement and pick up the deed copy. From this moment, in law, the condo is in your name. I leaned against the hall wall and felt my blood ease, like shoes coming off after a long walk. Thank you. I said 2 simple words I owed myself for years. I hung up. In the kitchen, Tanisha lined up forks and spoons like pieces on a game board. I looked at her, at Marcus, at the dining table where the first dinner smashed apart. The city map in my head cleared, streets I circled, alleys I feared, and the straight road with my name just opened. Domestic violence trained me for darkness, so when light arrived, I knew how not to blink. That night, I set Mr. Price's card on my nightstand, next to Theo's smiling photo. Do you see? I whispered. I put my name back on my life. Outside, Lake Michigan breathed slow. I closed my eyes and heard water tapping the shore far away, like someone keeping time. Tomorrow, if they throw another plate, it will hit the floor of my home. And when it's time to speak, I will speak with my name, my papers, and the voice of a woman who no longer knocks on the wrong door. That night, the city lights fell on Lake Michigan like tiny pieces of glass. I stood in my room and heard glasses clink in the living room, like little bells. Tanisha picked this night to show off the home. She smiled more than usual. Her smile was sharp, like a knife cutting thin meat. I, Lila May Dubois, Miss Lila in Bronzeville, leaned on my door and held Addie, Langston Price's thin file. The papers smelled like fresh ink. The words were clear. Grantee, Lila May Dubois. My heart beat slow and steady, like a paddle in water back and forth, not rushed but sure. I opened my door. Tanisha's cold perfume filled the air. Her guests were dressed up, laughing like bubbles. The sound covered the walls that used to swallow my breath. On the dark wood table sat a tray of cheese, purple grapes, and a vase of hydrangeas. Everything was shiny. Everything was neat. At the head of the table, Marcus poured wine, his shoulders loose like a man with no worries about his mother. "What are you doing out here?" Tanisha saw me first. The question sounded light, but it hit hard. I walked forward. Not fast, but straight. I pulled out a chair. Someone cleared their throat, not to be polite, but because it was strange to see an older woman sit at the head of a table for a party where her name wasn't on the list. I put the folder on the edge of the tablecloth. The smell of paper mixed with the blue cheese. It felt half party, half courtroom. "You don't have a place here," Tanisha said, still smiling at her guests like an actress who missed a step but kept smiling. Marcus sipped his wine and glanced at me. "Mama," I invited people. "Go rest in your room." The word rest felt like a pin on the lip. "I do have a place," I said, not loud, but clear enough to touch every glass. "And starting tonight, that place will have the right name." I opened the folder and slid out the deed copy. The letters were thin like fish bones, but they stood in straight lines. I laid the paper in the center of the table that had refused my cooking. "What's that?" one guest said with a small laugh. Tanisha didn't laugh. She bent to read. I watched her face lose its shine, like someone turned off a light under her makeup. "No way," she said. She looked up, lips shaking, then tried to joke. "Fake papers, old lady?" She used old lady like a cheap hook to poke a person. "Real papers," I said. "Real name, real money, and this real condo is in my name." I spoke each word so they didn't slip apart. Marcus took the paper from his wife. He read it once, then again. His eyes chased the lines like a kid chasing a kite with no string. "Mama," he said, voice rough. How did this happen?" He wasn't asking me. He was asking his habit, the habit that everything ends up neat. "Because domestic violence starts by taking away names," I said, looking at him. When I was pushed off the table, Out of the living room, away from the window, away from a tiny pot of mint, I was also pushed off the paper. Today I put my name back. I pointed to Grantee like pointing to a scar that just healed. The room changed. The laughing stopped, like a plug got pulled. One guest pressed her lips and whispered, "We should go." Tanisha waved for them to stay. She took a long breath and rebuilt her smile. "Fine," she said. "Say the paper is real. You think you can kick us out?" She leaned in, voice smooth as oil. "Domestic violence? Are you acting like a victim in front of my friends?" She pressed on, acting, like a new label could change the truth. I pulled my chair closer and let the back touch my back. The chair had turned me away many times. Tonight, it would be my witness. "I'm not acting," I said. "I'm telling." I tapped the paper again, like a period at the end of a very long sentence. "And this story has a new chapter. Leave my home, Tanisha." My voice wasn't loud, but it walked down a long hallway and kept going. The words, "my home," rolled across the floor and touched every ankle in the room. People stood. People reached for coats. Marcus raised both hands. "Wait, Mama. Let's talk in the bedroom." "No," I said, cutting him off for the first time in this condo. What happened to me happened right here at this table, in front of others, soup poured out, plates thrown, dinners eaten standing up. So the truth will sit on this table, in front of others. Tanisha gave a hard, plastic laugh. "You like a show? Okay. You stayed in my home for months, and now you demand to throw us out." She pushed on, demand, trying to drag everyone to her floor. She grabbed the paper, trying to rip it. I set my hand on the deed, small but steady, the same hand that held a ladle for 40 years. "Don't," I said. "The original isn't here. Thank you for watching. Add my due inhabitant avriant. And tin." Tanisha's patience dropped with a clack. She leaned over the table, face close. "What do you want?" I smelled wine and perfume, the smell of a fight. I answered slowly, so every guest could hear, and so I could hear myself. "I want my home quiet. I want the table for family, not a stage for violence. I want everyone here to know the lines. And starting tonight, the line is, you leave my home." Marcus sucked in air like he just came up from underwater. "Mama, You can stay," I said straight to him. "But if you stay, you follow my house rules. No more neat that erases people. No more don't as a command. No more domestic violence in any silent form." I turned to Tanisha. "You leave tonight. Tomorrow we see the lawyer, list personal items, and make a plan for you to pick them up. But tonight, you go." The room wobbled like a tall glass set off-center. Chairs scraped, shoes tapped, the door clicked again and again. The perfume smell thinned like smoke. 3 of us remained. Tanisha stood tall, her smile gone, her stare bare. "You think this ends well for you?" she asked, voice cold. "You're old. Your knees hurt. Your heart is weak. You will need someone. When you need help, who will you call?" She stepped closer, like a knife moving half an inch. "I'll call my own name first," I said. "Then I'll call my lawyer. Then I'll call 911 if I must. That is the order." I stood up and straightened my back. My back isn't young, but tonight it was a straight needle. "You ask if I'm scared?" "Yes. But fear can't stop a person from saying the right name for harm. Domestic violence doesn't just break bones, it breaks names." I just picked my name up. Marcus set his glass down. The small tap sounded like an apology. He looked at me, eyes not used to looking straight at his mother. "Mama, The words stuck in the throat of a man who thought silence was peace. "We don't need more words tonight," I said. "You only need to listen. And do." I walked around the table, lifted Tanisha's coat, and held it toward the door. "Keys," I said, opening my palm. I had held out this hand many times to give food, give medicine, give a towel. Tonight I held it out to take back keys. Tanisha looked at the keys like they were a piece of someone's heart. Her knuckles went white. Then she gave a short, sharp laugh. "Fine. I'll go. But remember this. A home isn't only paper. A home is people." She tossed the keys into my hand and walked out. Her heels hit the floor, spelling a threat. The door shut. The hall ate her steps. Only Marcus and I were left. The living room echoed. The hydrangeas bent, like they had heard late news. I set the keys on the table next to the deed. 2 small things, one metal, one paper yet as heavy as the years I just picked up. "Mama, I'm sorry," Marcus said softly. I didn't look at him right away. I looked around the room that had been a stage for domestic violence. The table that saw spilled soup, the chair that once refused me, the white curtains that stayed closed to block the smell of people. "Tomorrow," I said. "We talk tomorrow. Tonight you clear the glasses and the wine. The kitchen needs the smell of warm water, not cheese. And when you're done, leave the table empty." "Why empty?" he asked, like a boy who forgot a lesson. "So tomorrow we can set our first dinner in my home," I said. "A dinner where someone sits, chairs are pulled out, and names are in the right places." I held the keys and listened to the small metal sound in my palm. It was a tiny sound, but it was the trumpet of life. Outside, Lake Michigan whispered. Inside, the violence pulled back and left a space. The space wasn't scary. It was where light could enter. And there, I put down my name first, then the meal. I hadn't put the keys in the drawer yet when Tanisha came back. The door had just closed and swung open again, like the hallway refused to keep something it didn't want. Her eyes looked like steel. "I forgot my phone," she said, but she didn't walk toward the sofa, she walked straight at me. I stayed where I was, my back against the table edge. Marcus stood between us, hands still wet from washing glasses. "Tanisha, stop," he said, voice shaking. "We'll talk to the lawyer tomorrow." She didn't look at Marcus. She looked at me and lowered her voice. "You think one piece of paper is enough? A home is people. The strong keep the home." I didn't move back. "A home is a boundary," I said. And the boundary spoke tonight. I saw her shoulders twitch like the move before a jump. It happened fast, 1 step forward, both hands slammed into my shoulders, the side table slid off my hip, my balance went. I fell. The floor flew up like a block of ice. Something inside me made a thick crack. Pain. Pain like a white lightning line from my hip to my heart, cutting off my words. I heard Marcus shout, things crash, the wall clock swing. Tanisha stepped back a half step, like someone who had just thrown something heavy. She looked at Marcus. She fell by herself. She's old. "Stop talking," Marcus yelled, face pale. He knelt to help me. I raised my hand to block him. "Don't touch," I whispered, not from hate, but because touch made the pain explode. I took small breaths, short and even, like blowing on a small fire to keep it alive. Domestic violence is sometimes yelling. Tonight, it was the sound of bone. I inched myself against the cabinet and pulled my phone from my pocket. My thumb shook but remembered the path. 911. The dispatcher's voice was clear and steady. 911, what's your emergency? "I'm Lila Mae Dubois," I said, each word passing a patch of thorns. I was pushed and fell at home. Hip pain, Lake Meadows, apartment number. I read the address, number by number. On the line, a calm woman said, "This is Renee Taylor. Stay where you are. Ambulance and police are on the way. Can you breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth with me?" "Any bleeding?" I answered, short. Each sentence from Renee was like sliding a small wedge under a stuck door, just enough air to get in. Tanisha paced like a caged animal. She turned to Marcus. "Say it. Say your mother slipped." Marcus froze. He looked at me. He looked at his hands. I had never seen my son's hands shake like that. He turned to Tanisha, voice rough. "You pushed, Mama." 3 words dropped like a thing held too long. "You betray me?" Tanisha gasped. "You stand with her after all we—" "What did we do?" Marcus cut in, his voice with a new hard line. "We turned a home into a prison. Domestic violence, that's the name." He said it like a confession and a verdict. Sirens grew from far to near. I heard a promise in them. Help is coming. Order is coming. The door opened. 2 officers came in, Officer Denise Walker and Officer Harold Banks. Behind them were 2 medics. I saw the name Jordan Ellis on the younger one's badge. Officer Walker knelt to my eye level. "Are you Miss Dubois?" I nodded. "Where is the worst pain?" Left hip, I said, cold sweat at my neck. Did you pass out? No. Walker looked around and noted the scene, chairs off place, spilled wine, the deed open on the table. Officer Banks stepped away and stood between Tanisha and me, a boundary in human form. Jordan and the partner placed a temporary brace, counted my breaths, and checked my pulse. "You're okay, ma'am," Jordan said, eyes warm like a small lamp. "We'll take you to Rush. Could be a hip fracture, but the doctor will confirm with X-ray." Officer Walker looked at Marcus and Tanisha. "Who saw what happened?" Marcus raised his hand. "I did. I saw my wife push my mother." Tanisha laughed hard. "Lies." She fell. Walker didn't rush. She kept with the steps, opening the process like a fan. "Any cameras? Any neighbors hear noise? Any past incidents?" Marcus pointed to the corner. "Doorbell camera caught party audio arguing, and there have been many times." I spoke up, weak but clear. "I want to report an assault in the context of domestic violence." The word sat steady in my mouth like a stone at a doorway. Walker nodded. "I hear you. We'll take the report." She turned to Tanisha. "Ma'am, I need you to stay in place and not approach the victim." "She's lying," Tanisha snapped. "She wants to steal my husband and my home. The home is in my name," I said, pointing to the deed. Officer Banks lifted it, glanced at the record number, and wrote it down. "This will go in the report," he said. Jordan signaled they were ready to move me. They lifted me onto the stretcher gently. If they moved even a hair wrong, the pain tried to explode, but their hands made a soft path for my body. "Renee alerted the hospital," Walker said, reassuring. "I'll follow and take your statement if you're up to it." Before the stretcher rolled out, Walker looked at Tanisha again. "Ma'am, based on the witness statement, the scene, and risk of repeat harm, you are being detained for investigation of domestic battery." She read the rights. The cuffs clicked very softly, the kind of sound only people who've lived long in silence can hear for what it is. Tanisha jerked. "Marcus, say something!" Marcus said nothing. He looked at me. In his eyes, I saw something I'd waited years to see, choosing responsibility. The hallway felt longer than usual. In the elevator, the lights showed my face pale and older than my age, but at the corners of my eyes there was something new, a sharp line. Beside me, Jordan held the rail. "You're doing great," he said. "The pain will pass. After that is recovery will be there." I thought of Nia Brooks, the nurse at Rush I hadn't met yet but had seen on Addie Price's list. I held to each name the way a person holds a new handrail. The ambulance hummed. I looked at the ceiling strips. "Jordan," I asked softly, "do you have a mother?" "Yes, ma'am," he smiled. "She loves teaching me to cook gumbo." "Then," I said, smiling thinly, "you understand why a dinner with chairs that welcome people matters." At Rush, white light met me, an older doctor with glasses, voice warm like an old wooden chair. "We'll get X-rays right away, miss. Lila May." It all moved like a line. Intake, imaging, result, fractured femoral neck, surgery to pin it. I signed the consent. My signature was messy with pain but clear, Lila May Dubois. Anesthesia, dim lights. I went under, carrying the sense of a door closing quietly behind me, the door of standing dinners, flying plates, and neat as an order. I woke to a recovery ceiling like a foggy lake. Nia Brooks stood by my bed, kind, dark eyes, badge clipped straight. "Hi, Miss Lila," she said, voice like a thin blanket laid gently. "Surgery went well. Now my best part, helping you control pain and get your breathing steady." At the foot of the bed, Marcus sat with red eyes. He stood when I opened mine. "Mama." His voice broke. I looked at Nia. She tugged the curtain halfway for a little privacy. "Police called," Marcus said quietly. "Tanisha is held overnight. Court in the morning. Officer Walker will ask for a no-contact order for you." I closed my eyes for a second and breathed out. Not joy. A kind of quiet. "I'll cooperate and testify," Marcus added. "This time I'll say everything. I'll call Addie, Langston Price, for the civil side to protect you." In little great. I looked at him for a long moment. "Marcus," I said, rough but clear, "do you know why I held out my hand for the keys?" He shook his head. Because domestic violence doesn't just take a chair, it takes the keys, the right to open, to close, to set rules in the home. When I held the keys again, I held a piece of being your mother again. He cried without hiding. I set my hand on his. Tomorrow, I said, go to my home and clean the party away, toss the wine, open the windows, make a pot of soup, set 2 bowls on the table. He nodded, like a boy given his first homework and knowing he can do it. Nia came back to check the IV. Rest tonight, she said. Tomorrow, Deshaun Carter from physical therapy will teach breathing and gentle turns. We'll do it bit by bit. I smiled. Bit by bit is the one thing I still trust. Late at night, I looked at Chicago's dark through the hospital window. The monitor beeped steady, like the lake tapping a far shore. I thought about the home, the Lake Meadows condo that now has the right name. I thought about the dark wood table that tomorrow won't smell like cheese, but like hot soup. I thought about the line we said earlier, home is people. Yes, and people are boundaries. When the boundary stands up straight, a home becomes a home again. I turned my head away from the sore hip and whispered to myself, I called the right name. In the white room, the name wasn't loud, but it stood firm. And from now on, every morning when I wake, I'll start by saying, Lila Mae Dubois. Then I'll name the next things justice, treatment, recovery, community. That's the order. I learned it on the night the cuffs closed, and a door, at last, opened. On my first morning after surgery at Rush, I opened my eyes and saw sunlight like a thin, white lace across the sheet. Nia Brooks checked my pulse, her voice soft like a warm blanket. Good morning, Miss Lila. Today we learn 3 things: deep breathing, pain control, and safe rolling. I smiled. 3 things sound small, but for someone with a pinned hip, it's a whole hill to climb. Listen to me, Nia said, setting the monitor by the bed. Pain isn't the enemy. Pain is a signal. We give it a name, then sit it down. I repeated that in my head, give the pain a name, like I named domestic violence that night. After it has a name, it doesn't vanish, but it sits in the right place. Near noon, Deshaun Carter came in tall, broad-shouldered, calm smile. Miss Lila Mae, I teach knees and hips to speak human, he joked. But before your hip talks, we breathe. He put a pillow between my knees, checked the brace, then led me, in through the nose, out through the mouth. I followed, hearing my breath turn into a steady stream, like a paddle in water. With each breath, the pain felt less sharp. Good, he said. Now we roll to the right, slow, with me and Nia holding. We counted. 1, 2, 3. My body turned, and the room tilted a little. I didn't cry. I heard myself whisper, yes. By late afternoon, Marcus came in with messy hair and puffy eyes. He set a paper bag on the chair. Mama, I brought chicken porridge. And he pulled out a new bathroom grab bar, the steel still smelling like oil. I had one installed at Lake Meadows. He rushed to say, afraid I might say no. There's a fold-down tub seat, a nightlight in your room, and non-slip mats. I also moved some furniture so the hallway is clear. I prepaid 3 months for home nursing and PT. I want you to come home to your own place without fear of falling. I took in each thing he said, not with my eyes, but with memory. The path once blocked by fancy furniture, now he said, clear. I heard a door open inside that word. That night, with the heart monitor ticking, I thought of my old kitchen and the steam fogging the glass above a hot bowl of soup. I promised myself, when I can stand in the Lake Meadows kitchen, my first pot will be black bean soup. The soup once used to shame me will be the soup I pour, set on the table, and invite someone to sit and eat. Domestic violence can steal a dish's name for a while, but a steady kitchen can take its language back. On day 2, Deshaun rolled in a walker. Let's stand, he said. On 3. Push down on the walker, tighten the thigh, shift your weight. My heart pounded, but my left leg answered the signal. The metal in my hip felt hot and bright. I stood straight for 3 counts, then sat and panted like I'd climbed church stairs. 3 is great, Deshaun said, tapping my hand. Tomorrow, 4. Then 5. We're playing Add 1. Nia changed the dressing and taught me which pills to take first and which after food. Don't be brave by suffering, she said. Real bravery is calling for help, using medicine on time, and saying enough before you're past your limit. That word felt like a sign on my door. Enough. I didn't know that word well in my quiet marriage or in those months at Lake Meadows. That night, I wrote enough in the margin of my hospital notes, next to say the right name for domestic violence. 8. On day 3, Officer Denise Walker stopped by with paperwork, a restraining order. You're safer now, she said. But remember, if anyone breaks it, call 911. We've spoken with building management. Security will help. I looked at the judge's signature, slanted and firm like a fence. Marcus stood behind me and dropped his shoulders a bit, like someone putting down a rock carried too long. He spoke low. I told the police everything. I also spoke with Addie Langston Price about the civil side, so no one can turn coming to get things into a fight. On day 4, I practiced walking to the doorway and touched the frame like a mile marker. Home tomorrow, Nia smiled. Home is where there are new rails, non-slip mats, and people who say your name right. I nodded. Home is people, Tanisha once said like a threat. Yes, home is people who know boundaries. Discharge day came with honey-colored sun. Marcus booked medical transport with straps and a ramp. Jordan Ellis walked us to the lobby and high-fived me. Text me when you can do 3 laps in the living room, he said. I promised, like promising a kind stranger who felt like family. The Lake Meadows door opened. I smelled fresh paint and dry wood. The hallway was truly wide. The coffee table moved to the wall. The sofa turned toward the window to catch the lake light. In the kitchen, the counter no longer shone like a mirror of fear. On it sat 2 bowls, side by side, and a neatly folded towel. I stood in the kitchen doorway, gripping the frame, chest rising like someone just climbed from the water. Sit, Mama, Marcus said, pulling a chair, but I shook my head. Let me stand for 3 counts. I counted, then sat, and heard the bones inside me say yes again. In the afternoon, Deshawn came by, checked the grab bars, measured the turn space for the walker, and stuck reflective tape on the balcony step. All good. He nodded. Now we do stand, step, rest around the dining table. I made a half lap and sweat pooled at my temples. Perfect, Deshawn said. Sweat is your progress certificate. Marcus opened the cabinet, took out the pot, and turned on the stove. I want to learn your black bean soup, he said, like asking to join a class. I showed him how to wash beans, sauté onions, and salt right. The low flame lifted a smell that was no longer from a broken night. It was the smell of a first dinner. I put my hand on the table. This table once heard me be told to leave, once heard a plate crash. Tonight, it would hear a spoon touch a bowl. That evening we sat. Marcus carried the bowl in both hands, like holding something fragile. Thank you, Mama, he said. I answered, Eat, son. Domestic violence had turned this kitchen into a place to measure power. This dinner turned it back into a place to measure warmth. I ate slowly, letting my tongue remember the beans and my heart remember a steady face across from me. After dinner, Monique Harris from Social Services stopped by. 10 minutes. She smiled and handed me a home care plan. Naya's dressing schedule, Deshawn's therapy times, trusted neighbors, and the building manager's number. And this, she added, putting down a small flyer. The building's Sunday coffee group, Beverly Miss Bev Parker, hosts it. When you're ready, go. Community keeps people from slipping on bad days. He's Manik Kaj. Late at night, I stepped onto the balcony and leaned on the new rail. Lake Michigan was black velvet, city lights stuck in it like tiny pins. I spoke softly, just for me. Today, I walked 6 steps around the table. A few months ago, I couldn't take 1 step from the kitchen to the living room, not because of my legs, but because of fear. Fear, mixed with domestic violence, curls a person up like a leaf in fire. Now I opened like a leaf in rain. Before sleep, Nia called to check in. Miss Lila, pain level? 3, I said. Do you have enough pain meds? Enough, I smiled. You did great today, she said. I turned off the light and left a small nightlight in the hall, gold and soft. I understood that healing isn't a straight line. It's a stitch line. Some stitches neat, some crooked, some that have to be redone. But stitch by stitch, I name, I knot, I smooth. Tomorrow, I'll try 4 laps around the table. The next day, I'll open the window longer and let the lake wind into the kitchen. In a week, I'll carry a small teapot. In a month, I'll set a mint pot on the balcony rail with my own hands. And each time I do one more thing, I'll whisper to the room that once felt like a jail. My home, my name, my breath. Standing between hurt and healing, I can see one thing clearly. What saved me wasn't only the metal pin, the court order, or the deed. It was the new order I set. Name the pain, name the domestic violence, name the boundary. When things have names, they line up. And when they line up, I, Lila Mae Dubois, can walk past them, slow but steady, and go home. Saturday morning, I opened the window to the lake wind. The air from Michigan carried a far salt smell, slipped through the curtain, and rested on the dark wood table, the table that used to be a stage and is now a place for meals. I set the kettle on the stove. While I waited for water to boil, the bell rang. Marcus stood outside with a small bunch of daisies. He didn't use a key like before. He pressed the bell and waited. That was the first boundary we agreed on. "Come in," I said, opening the door. Marcus walked in slowly, watching my face like checking the weather. "I brought a new schedule," he said, handing me a page. Times for visits, calls, and house chores he would do, buying basics, taking out trash on Wednesdays, driving me to follow-up visits that Nia Brooks arranged. At the bottom was one line: "If I hurt your feelings, tell me right away. I won't guess." I nodded. Good. We live by a clear schedule, not by jumpy feelings. We sat across from each other, 2 bowls of black bean soup steaming. I put my hand on the table and looked at my son. "Marcus, this home is mine. You have a spare key, but every time you come, you ring and wait for me to say yes. No surprise visits. No opening cabinets to look for things. No cleaning up what I didn't ask you to." He nodded and gripped the chair, like a person learning self-control. "I understand," he said. "Violence isn't only hands. I got used to quiet control, like domestic violence made of house rules no one says out loud. I need time to break that habit." "You'll have time," I said, "but words must be right now. We don't speak for each other." I gave him a small card, Monique Harris's number, our social worker, and the church family support group. "Try going," I said. Silence grew fear in this home. We stop it by going where people call things by their right names. In the afternoon, Monique came with a fresh folder, an updated care plan. I added community connection, she said, marking 2 lines. 1. The Sunday coffee group led by Beverly Miss Bev Parker in the community room talk about books, plants, and healing. 2. A breathing and balance class by the lakeside trail with volunteers to help. Monique looked at me. "Can you go?" I smiled. "If the wind isn't too cold, I'll go. I need to practice going out without carrying the shadow of fear." That evening, I pulled a chair by the window and did Monique's boundary exercise. Write 3 yes and 3 no. My yes 1, yes to clear visiting hours. 2, yes to my say in every change in the home. 3, yes to my quiet time, no reasons needed. My no. 1, no to, "Sorry, that's only gestures. An apology must come with action." 2, no to anyone deciding for me about rails, pathways, or windows. 3, no to silence about domestic violence even when it hides as neatness or order. On Sunday, I went to the community room. Miss Bev opened the door. The smell of waffles and coffee rolled out like a warm blanket. "Come on in, honey," she said, waving in a way that respected my slow steps. Inside, older women set out pots of mint, rosemary, and peppermint. I sat and listened to talk about wind seasons and which plants do well on Lake Meadow's balconies. When it was my turn, I spoke briefly. A shattered dinner, a push and a fall, a 911 call, surgery, and a deed that put my name back on my home. The room went quiet, not shocked, just understanding. Domestic violence didn't need a definition here. It had passed through all our lives in different ways. "What do you want to plant first?" Miss Bev asked. I looked at the window and pictured afternoon sun. "Mint," I said. "So the kitchen smells like people live here." She handed me a sprig and smiled. Mint handles wind well, like you. I held the little pot. It felt like holding a new breath. Some kinds of healing start with soil. At noon, Marcus took me to the lakeside trail for the balance class. Deshawn stood there with extra walkers. "All right, Miss Lila," he clapped. "Today we try step, look, pause." It was simple. Take 3 steps, look at the horizon, pause, and breathe. "Why look far?" I asked. "Because people who lived with domestic violence stare at their feet to avoid mistakes," Deshawn said. "Looking far teaches your body there are other roads. I tried it. The lake breeze opened my lungs. After 3 laps, my knees buzzed like tight strings, but my heart felt bigger. In the afternoon, Officer Denise Walker called. "Your order has a temporary extension," she said. "Building management has updated the list. Front desk security is briefed." I thanked her. After the call, I taped a copy of the order behind the door, not to scare anyone, but to remind myself. This time, the rules stand with me. I don't need to memorize escape routes. I just read what is already on paper. That night, Marcus washed dishes slowly, learning that housework is part of the language of love, not someone else's job. He wiped the balcony rail, then stood in front of the boundary board I hung in the kitchen. "May I add one?" he asked. "Add it," I said. He wrote, "I won't explain for Mom to anyone. If they want to know, they hear it from Mom." I read it and felt my chest loosen. For years, people spoke over me saying I was tired, forgetful, or picky to hide a truth. I never vanished. I was pushed out of the story. A week later, the new rhythm held. Morning. Breathing practice and 2 laps around the table. Noon. Water the mint. Afternoon. Call Monique with updates. Night. Read a chapter of a used novel and write 1 line of thanks. Some days, Nia changed my dressing and told me how her mother sings hymns while cooking. Some days, Deshawn taught me 1-leg stand, toe touch, by the chair, 5 seconds each time. No miracles, just steady adding up. Marcus still arrived on schedule. I kept reminding him not to bring guilt as a gift. "You help because you want to be a good man," I said. "Not to pay a debt. Debt makes dinner salty." Some days we simply watched the lake change color. Some days we fixed a loose outlet. Some days he told me about work, how he learned to say no when a boss asked for something unfair. Each time, I knew boundaries weren't only inside our home. They were walking with my son out in the world. One evening, I got a text from the Sunday coffee group. "This week's theme is Home is People." "Bring a line," I wrote in my notebook. "Home is where we are called by our right names and chairs are pulled out," I added. "When the dining table is no longer a battlefield, the kitchen speaks human again." I closed the notebook and touched the spot on my hand where hot soup had once burned. I won't erase that mark. It reminds me there was a time. Before bed, I called Addie. "Langston Price. I want to ask about a will," I said. "Not to punish anyone, but to bring peace. If I go first, this condo will go to a community fund for older women who need safe housing. Marcus already knows." He was quiet a second. "That's a permanent boundary," he said. "I'll draft it for you to review." I thanked him. I know home is people, and people need a clear path so they aren't cornered. Bronzeville spread little lights over the lake like slow-falling stars. I closed the curtains and turned on the gold nightlight in the hall. That small light has replaced the harsh wipe sound from the old days. I set my hand on the rail and said softly, "Tomorrow, 3 laps. Then 4. Then a trip to the flea market for more books. If the wind is strong, I'll stay in, make tea, and name the things in the room. Dining table, chair, mint pot, deed, order, schedule. I will call them by their right names so they remember their right places. Because in the end, I've learned this. Healing domestic violence isn't only leaving the hurt. It's *** building a life with order rules on paper and rules in the heart, ***, and living inside it day after day, like stitching a long seam with even stitches. I, Lila Mae Dubois, am stitching. The thread is catching strong. In Bronzeville, every night the lake wind passes my door, touches that thread, and it does not break. Early fall in Chicago, the sky changed color like someone turned a light filter. On my Lake Meadows balcony, my mint had rooted. Green leaves reached the new railing. I poured tea and set out 2 cups on purpose, one for me, one for the memory of days when there wasn't a chair for me. The apartment smelled lived-in tea, paper, dry wood, and crushed mint. Small, steady smells, like short sentences that are true. That morning, the mail carrier left a cream envelope at my door. I knew the slanted handwriting. Tanisha. I didn't open it right away. I set it by my tea and sat in silence to feel what my heart wanted. Revenge, pity, or simply the truth. At last I opened it and read each line. She wrote about court-ordered therapy, the anger under her childhood, and how she's learning words that don't hurt. She wrote, "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I want to admit I named things wrong. I called control order, silence, peace, and harm teaching. That was domestic violence. I take responsibility." I folded the letter. Lake wind cooled the paper edge. I didn't feel joy. I felt a small door crack open for change, one I don't have to open or guard. Some roads we don't walk just because we can. We stop because stopping is the kind thing for everyone. At noon, Marcus came. He rang and waited for me to say yes before using his key. "I'm heading to Wausau," he said. "New job is set. I fly next week." He looked around. The clear dining table, 2 bowls turned upside down, the wall with my boundaries frame, the mint on the balcony. "Will you be okay if I go?" I nodded. "I'm okay. You're going because you're growing, not running. I want to hear your laugh in a place that fits you." He smiled, less guilt, more purpose. In the soup I ladled for him were beans, pepper, and a rare spice, the calm that comes when everyone stands in their right place. In the afternoon, Monique Harris stopped by with flyers. Next week, the city starts Home Safe for older women, free home checks, extra hall lights, and smoke alarms. I marked my calendar. "And this," she smiled, "a new support group for family members Marcus can join in Wausau." I texted my son a photo. "No one is born knowing how to love in a healthy way. We all have to learn." He replied, "I'm learning, Mama." I called Addie Langston Price to confirm the will draft. His voice was steady. "I added a clause so your condo goes to the Lake Meadows Fund for older women at risk of violence if you pass before Marcus. While you're alive, you can still open your home for an emergency, stay up to 2 weeks a year, with a social worker's approval." I was quiet a moment. I thought of the Sunday coffee group, and Miss Bev's brown-spotted hands helping me lift a plant. Then I said, "Good. A home is people, and people need a safe way back." In the evening, Nia Brooks came to change my dressing. She told me her mother sings hymns while cooking gumbo, and that yesterday a patient stood 6 steps. "Miss Lila," Nia said, hand on my shoulder, "you know what I like most about you? Not that you're strong, but that you respect your own pace. You don't rush to look brave. You stitch each seam tight." I smiled. "Stitching is slow, but it doesn't break." Nia nodded, warm as a folded blanket. Before dawn Sunday, I woke before my alarm. The city was drowsy. Lake Michigan whispered like an old friend who keeps secrets. I opened the window, set the kettle on, and wrote my 3 daily lines. Today, deep breathing, 4 laps, thank one person. I chose Officer Denise Walker and sent a photo of the set table with a note. "This table changed jobs." She sent back a toast emoji and, "When order comes to the right house, the house is calm." At noon, I went to the coffee group. The theme was, "Home is people," I said. "Home is where we're called by our right names and chairs are pulled out. When the table is not a battlefield, the kitchen speaks human again." Heads nodded. Miss Bev handed me a little packet of seeds wrapped in newspaper. Thai basil. Fragrant. "One day you'll toss a handful into hot oil and hear it sing." I held the seeds like a promise. In the afternoon, the phone rang. "Tanisha." I heard wind on the line. She was outside. "I didn't expect you to answer," she said. "I want you to know I'm in a diversion program and going to therapy. I hired a lawyer to split property. I won't fight you. If you ever need my signature on anything for peace of mind, send it," I said. "Thank you for being direct. I wish you safety in your space, with your people. But the boundary is the boundary now." She sighed. I know. I hope you have many meals with chairs. Yes, I said, and fewer breaking sounds. The call ended softly like a door sliding into its track. Near evening, Marcus visited once more before his trip. He hung a small photo on the kitchen wall, me smiling beside the mint on a sunny morning. "So, you remember you did this for yourself," he said. We hugged short, the kind two people give when they don't use arms to cover unsaid words. "I'll call Thursday nights like the schedule," he said at the door. "And when I stumble, I won't go quiet, I'll tell you." I nodded and handed him a small bag of cookies. "Eat on the way. Endurance doesn't come from guilt, it comes from decent meals." Night fell. I turned on the gold nightlight in the hall, the light that replaced the old wipe sound, and opened the window to let the lake breeze into the kitchen. I read Tanisha's letter once more, then filed it under answered. I opened the cupboard and took out the dishes I use only for occasions I choose. I thought of women walking the halls of their own homes, each with a story, a scar, a document, a hope. I wished that if they got lost, they'd see my small light as a sign of a safe zone. I poured myself more tea and wrote the last line in my notebook. My map now has new roads: law, community, care, limits, and compassion with boundaries. I closed the book and listened to soft jazz from the street below. Somewhere in the sax line, I noticed the most important change. I'm not trying to forget. I let what happened stand in its right place like a chapter I don't tear out, so that each time I lift a bowl of soup, I know I'm lifting survival too. A strong gust touched the mint. The leaves shook like tiny applause. I smiled for myself, and for those who walked the long hallway of domestic violence without dropping their names. I stood, held the rail, and walked 4 laps around the table as promised. On the 4th, I stopped and set my palm on the wood. "Thank you for holding on and for changing with me. Pas exemple de desness." Before lights out, here's a kind invitation for you and anyone listening. If this story moved you, follow the channel so we can open more safe doors. If you have feedback, leave a comment. I'll read it like a letter from family. If today's video isn't your style, try tapping like anyway, not as praise, but to nudge me to do better next time. Thank you for staying to the end. On screen, you'll see a few more life stories step through one. Maybe we'll meet again at a dinner where a chair is already pulled out. At the bottom of Tanisha's envelope, a small slip fell out the address of an evening class called The Language of Homes That Breathe. Next week, I'll stop by. Maybe that's where the next chapter begins.